This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. Worlds collide for Donald Trump next week. On one hand, he's got to appear in New York for a deposition in a case brought by two former FBI agents for wrongful retaliation and wrongful termination and privacy invasion. He has to sit for a 2-hour deposition in New York related to that next week on the same exact time as Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's former consigliere fixer, now podcaster and best-selling author, takes the stand probably in the New York Attorney General's civil fraud case of the century against Donald Trump and all the little Trumpers. This is going to be must-watch TV, although it's not going to be on TV, but it will be reported on the MeidasTouch network and on Legal AF and on hot takes like this one. Let's talk about these two worlds and what they mean. Let's start with the deposition. Donald Trump has been dreading this deposition, has been fighting this deposition, as honestly, so has the Department of Justice, which is not on the side of the two FBI agents, Peter Strzok and his then girlfriend, Lisa Page, one being a FBI agent, the other one being an attorney for the FBI, both working on the Mueller Russia investigation, but also shared some text messages with each other about, how they were more Democrat than Republican. Let's just leave it at that. They weren't pro-Trump. Let's just leave it at that. And so that got out. They got canned by their supervisor, and Donald Trump took credit for it in social media. Yes, got rid of that communist, fascist, socialist FBI agent, all a hoax, Russia, Russia, Russia. You remember. And so now they since 2019, they've had a federal case in the District of Columbia, Page and Strzok, before and presided over by Judge Amy Berman Jackson. Judge Amy Berman Jackson refused and rejected the Department of Justice representing the United States of America against these two FBI agents, their demand that there be no deposition of Donald Trump. One, it has to do with precedent. They don't really want former presidents having to testify about things he did while he was president, even if they have to hold their nose because this former president happens to be the insurrectionist and coup plot leader, Donald Trump. Department of Justice has principles, and they're principled, and sometimes that goes beyond whoever was the then current occupant or then occupant of the Oval Office. And so sometimes it makes for really strange bedfellows where the Department of Justice looks on paper to be defending Donald Trump, but they're really not. They're defending the office of the presidency forever for historical precedent and judicial precedent purposes. And so they're sort of on the same side of Donald Trump on this case. Donald Trump didn't want to give the deposition. The Department of Justice didn't want him to sit for the deposition, while the plaintiffs did, especially Lisa Page, who says her privacy was invaded because text messages that were private between her and Strzok were revealed in social media through Donald Trump and others. And so that deposition got set in July. We thought maybe the government shutdown, that's probably going to happen again in 30 days. But we thought the government shutdown would put a stop to the deposition. But now it's going forward, and it happens to line up, October the 17th, which is early next week on Tuesday, right when the time the case in chief in the New York Attorney General case is rounding around to Michael Cohen, right? The wheel spins, the roulette wheel spins, and it lands on Cohen. Why is Michael Cohen so important? And I love his comments in an interview recently when they asked him, "Hey, Michael, did you know Donald Trump's going to come back for your testimony?" And he's like, "Good, I haven't seen him in 5 years. It'll be good to see him. He's scared. He's petrified of me." It's probably true. There is no doubt, and there can be no debate, that the reason we have a New York Attorney General civil fraud case against Donald Trump that's already, at least on one count by the judge, found that there was persistent fraud in the operation of Donald Trump and his businesses for years related to asset false valuation, false increase in asset valuation, and then deflation of assets in order to save on taxes. That all came from testimony Michael Cohen gave in 2019 to Congress. If he hadn't given that testimony to Congress, then that would not have piqued the interest of both the New York Attorney General after she got into the office, because she was running at the time, it's an elected position, Letitia James, and the then Manhattan District Attorney, Cy Vance, who got replaced by Alvin Bragg, who decided after a year or so of looking at the facts, he didn't want to do it on a criminal prosecution, leaving it to Letitia James to go after Donald Trump and all the Trump organizations on a persistent fraud basis under a very strong and unique set of New York laws on the books since 1956 called Executive Law 63-12. Now, that boring name masks a tremendous, robust, and powerful and muscular set of laws that allows the New York Attorney General, generally without even showing that there's an intent to defraud or that there's any victims or any loss, but if it has an impact on the market, to go after persistent fraud and shut it down. And that's what happened 2 weeks ago with the judge in that case, ruling on summary judgment that there's been a showing of persistent fraud. And now we'll move on to the other 6 conspiracy and fraud claims that are now in the trial. That brings us to Michael Cohen. Now, I've talked about on other hot takes and on Legal AF, my leading podcast at Law, Politics, and Justice that I co-anchor on Wednesdays and Saturdays right here on the MeidasTouch Network. We've talked at length about the momentum that you build as a trial lawyer in the narrative that you're presenting to a judge or a jury, and that the sequence of your witnesses are really, really important. I know that. I've been a trial lawyer for 32 years. I've practiced in the courtrooms just like the one I'm talking about here, including in the one I'm talking about here in New York, where I practice. So what are we talking? Popok, what are you talking about? Who you pick. It's not just random. You don't just take a Scrabble bag, shake it, spill it out, like start picking out, I'll do this witness, this in this order. It's not a what do you call it? Poetry magnets that you throw up on the kitchen refrigerator. You select, but based on what you know about their testimony and who they are as witnesses and the case you're building and the narrative you're building one after another as you build momentum to win your case in chief. It's important. That's why she started her case, Letitia James, the Office of Attorney General, with Donald Bender, who was the outside longtime 12-year auditor accountant for Donald Trump personally, Weisselberg, the CFO personally, McConney, the controller personally, all the Trump kids, and he knew where all the bodies were buried at the Trump organization and with Donald Trump. And he kicked off, first witness, really important. It's the one, if you have a jury, the jury pays the most attention to. That's what jury science tells us. But we don't have a jury. We got a judge who's hanging on every word, Judge Engoron. He's already been in the case for a year. He's already had dozens of evidentiary hearings, sanctioned and fined Donald Trump, gagged Donald Trump, found that his company was committed fraud, persistent fraud, installed a financial monitor over Donald Trump and all of his business affairs already, still in place, ordered the dissolution of all of Donald Trump's businesses. That Judge Engoron, he's hanging on every word. Things that would normally bore you and me or the jury, like let's go through every check written by Donald Trump front and back. Jury starts flatlining about 20 minutes into that. But this judge hanging on every word. And so, mindful of that, the Office of Attorney General is picking its witnesses. Bender first, dump on Donald Trump about years of tax fraud and asset fraud. Then go to 2 insider money men, right? One who went to jail already, the CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and the other one who got immunity to avoid going to jail. Have them testify about all the insider shenanigans that Donald Trump was responsible for and all the things Donald Trump signed that were part of the fraud. That's mastery. Chef's kiss to the Office of Attorney General. Then you move on, right? Let's bring a banker in, Deutsche Bank, that lent all that money to Donald Trump based on falsely inflated assets, and talk about how the bank relied on the fact that Donald Trump's assets appeared to be 3 to 5 to 10 times larger than they really were when they lent them money. Great. Who do you call next? Maybe another banker, maybe another accountant. And then you bring it all together on day. Now look, we're only, by that point, 5, 10, we're like 12 days into trial. The trial is going to go over 100 days. And she's already, the Attorney General, bringing in Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen's coming in to testify. Now, you know what he's going to say. He's on our network. He's on Political Beatdown. He's on Mea Culpa. We know what he's going to say. Michael's very public about what he's going to say. And he gave public testimony for which there's transcripts and videos of Donald Trump inflating his assets in order to get on the Forbes 400 list, in order to borrow money he wasn't entitled to, in order to insure his properties at a greater value than they were entitled to, and then deflated them when he wanted to save on taxes. High personal net worth when I'm borrowing, low when I got to pay taxes. That's all Michael Cohen. If it wasn't for Michael Cohen's testimony, there is no doubt that we would not be talking about every day for the next 100 days a fraud case of the century against Donald Trump. And now he's coming in. Now, Michael's got some baggage. We like Michael on the podcast. He's a colleague and a friend. However, he did go to jail and get convicted of crimes that would have put him in jail for 3 years. He got out earlier. COVID happened and time served and all that. But, Michael's got some baggage. Michael had so much baggage at one point from credibility standpoint. That's one of the reasons at the time Alvin Bragg did not want to go after Donald Trump on this set of frauds as a crime. Although Alvin Bragg did get right with Michael and did decide after a series of interviews that happened in the last 8 or 9 months that Michael would be a very good witness to help in the Stormy Daniels hush money cover-up business record fraud case that's still pending by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office with Judge Merchan, which was scheduled to go to trial in March, but is now being postponed because there's a bigger Trump case with Jack Smith in front of Judge Chutkan for election interference in March as well. Does this leave you breathless? Stay with me. I'm going to wrap it all up. Michael Cohen's going to testify. Donald Trump picks and chooses when he wants to show up for maximum publicity. Right? This is just another campaign, another whistle stop on the train, another campaign stop for Donald Trump. Or as Letitia James likes to call it, the Donald Trump show has left town. Or the circus, it's like the circus. It literally is like a circus. The circus comes, it's very noisy, there's lights, there's peanuts on the ground, there's an elephant crapping behind you, and then it leaves. And that's kind of describes Donald Trump's arrival back to New York, his quote-unquote hometown where he can do no wrong, to watch the trial. He did nothing to intimidate Judge Engoron. All he did was got himself gagged because he attacked Judge Engoron's principal law clerk, which of course will not help him in the other cases where people are considering gagging him, like Judge Chutkan, who's going to decide next week on that issue. So Donald Trump holding press conferences on the courthouse step and going to Wendy's and, coming out every 10 minutes during breaks to talk to the press and missing court when he got bored. Using court and his desire to go there as a way to avoid the Michael Cohen deposition. Remember that? If Donald Trump really wanted to see Michael Cohen, he could have saw him in deposition 10 days ago. But right at the last minute, to avoid the deposition after telling a federal magistrate judge, Judge Torres, that the reason he couldn't do the Michael Cohen deposition 2 weeks ago is he had to go to the first week, at least, of the civil fraud case in New York. Really important. And the judge says, all right, well, that sounds legitimate. Why don't you go do that? Donald Trump went 2.5 days. That circus crapped all over New York for 2.5 days. Not even a completion of the third day. He left, went to Florida, could have taken the deposition or sat for the deposition Michael Cohen was going to take of him because Cohen got sued by Donald Trump for $500 million for breach of fiduciary duty or whatever the argument was. We always thought it was a meritless case. And then instead of sitting for his deposition, his lawyers dismissed the case against Michael Cohen to avoid the deposition. So he's a coward. He'll be telling his people, I'm going back to New York to confront the lying, cheating Michael Cohen, that felon. To which I say, if you really wanted to have a confrontation with him, you should have sat down in a chair, been sworn in, have a court reporter present, and sit down and answer questions and answer under oath in the case that you filed against him. But you didn't want to do that, so you chickened out and you blinked and you dismissed the case. Now the worlds are colliding to bring this hot take to its natural conclusion. Trump's going to go for his deposition, court-ordered, federal court-ordered, upheld on appeal in the Page Strzok FBI case on Tuesday for a couple hours. Then he's going to have to decide whether he's going to go over, come through the wooden doors, sit at his table, put on his face, stare at his blank computer screen and try to intimidate Michael Cohen. I think that only concentrates Michael Cohen's mind more. Michael Cohen's been waiting for his day in court to testify against Donald Trump for a long, long time, right? 4 to 5 years. Every minute of every hour of every day in prison, Michael Cohen, I am sure, fantasized about the ability to get out and one day perhaps testify against Donald Trump so he gets his comeuppance. And here it is. And I'm sure the direct examination is going to be a thing of beauty. Where Michael Cohen, having the insider knowledge that he had, involved with every financial fraud and dealing of Donald Trump, having already served his time to society, gets to unburden himself and tell the truth under oath in front of Judge Engoron. Then there will be a cross-examination. We know the inevitable cross-examination. It's going to be Michael's felony, Michael's, things that were said about him by federal judges when they were sentencing him, his other kind of issues that don't relate to Donald Trump, personal and business matters. And, they'll, in front of Engoron, who's the judge, not the jury, who's already, I'm sure, baked in an impression of Michael Cohen, because Michael Cohen's a public figure, the judge will make a decision. All right. Look, I said on a prior hot take that he's going to give a truth discount, the judge, to somebody like Alan Weisselberg, the former disgraced felon convicted chief financial officer of the Trump organization, who's already testified, although he might be brought back, because it looks like he wasn't willingly providing truthful testimony because he's worried about losing a huge severance payment from Donald Trump. And that's what judges do. Judges evaluate the credibility of witnesses. It goes to credibility, as we like to say in the business. And he'll do that with Michael Cohen too. Just because Michael went to jail for something doesn't mean he's incapable of telling the truth. And that's going to be evaluated by Judge Engoron. And I'm sure he'll be a very compelling witness for the prosecution. Sorry. He will be a witness for the prosecution one day for Stormy Daniels' case, but here a witness for the Office of Attorney General. And we'll just have to sit through the cross-examination and see how Michael fares, but he can hold his own. We know that. He'll have to sit and answer truthfully in response to cross-examination questions. But I'm sure at the end of the day, it'll be a net positive for the Office of Attorney General to have called Michael Cohen, especially in the momentum of the narrative of the witnesses that have already gone on. We'll continue to follow this, worlds collide of depositions and Michael Cohen and Donald Trump and civil and criminal cases all kind of coming together in one place. The MeidasTouch Network on their YouTube channel. You knew that. You're watching me here. You like my hot takes? I do them about every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, depending upon what's out there, at the intersection of law, politics, and justice. And then we pull all these kind of things together, these topics. We curate a show, a podcast, which is the leading podcast at law, justice, and politics intersection on the MeidasTouch Network. We call it Legal AF. Yep, it's what you think. I do it on Wednesdays. Karen Friedman Agnifilo joins. I do it on Saturdays. Ben Meiselas joins. And then we put it on audio platforms wherever you can get it. Free subscribe to the YouTube channel for MeidasTouch. Help them get to 2 million subscribers. The bigger they get, the louder your voice is heard. Until my next hot take, until my next episode of Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Hey, Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.